This is Part 2, Episode 70. A youth was standing not far away from the Tang sect, pacing up and down. There was a slightly nervous expression on his face, but it looked more like enthusiasm. Am I too early? The youth muttered to himself. Let me wait for a while. As he spoke, he raised his head to look at the sky. His eagerness was evident. Finally, he couldn't take it any further as the sun rose further. He walked a few steps to the gate before knocking with the door clapper. Even though the Tang sect had made significant developments in soul tools, they still used the most traditional and ancient gate. Knock, knock, knock. The crisp sound of the clapper rang out. It wasn't long before the door was opened. A youth in white poked his head out. Who are you looking for? The Tang sect disciples were divided into official disciples and disciples in name. Official disciples didn't have any specific regulations for their attire, but disciples in name had to wear white warrior robes. They looked very neat and tidy. The youth outside replied, I'm looking for Hui Yuhao. Is he around? The Tang sect's disciple in name nodded and answered, Senior Hui is around. The youth was jolted and said, I'll have to trouble you to inform him that Mo Xian is looking for him. In order to garner more respect from this disciple in name, he added, I'm from Shrek. Indeed, the disciple in name started to act more prudently. Please wait a minute. I'll inform him now. While Hui Yuhao was still young, the Tang sect was founded by the 7 of them. The disciples that had entered the sect later all called him senior, apart from some special situations. The youth who was pacing up and down outside the gate was Mo Xian, who had entered and risked his life in the Great Star Do Forest with Hui Yuhao not long ago. He was one of the inner courtyard disciples valued and nurtured by Shrek Academy. Ever since he had returned, he had not felt calm. The all-terrain self-driving fort had left an extremely deep impression in his mind. On the way back to the academy, Hui Yuhao had taught him a few control methods. Mo Xian also tried them out himself. It was his first time feeling that he didn't need anyone to protect him. In fact, even Hui Yuhao didn't know how important Mo Xian was to Shrek Academy. In terms of abilities, an advanced student from the outer courtyard was able to easily defeat Mo Xian. However, his abilities were too special. At that point in time, Zhong Lishuan and Cai Maya had only briefly mentioned how his auxiliary capabilities could be unleashed at long range. However, they didn't specifically state how great that range was. Even Hui Yuhao had neglected this point. After being back for 2 days, his heart felt as if it were being scratched by a cat's claws. He spent the entire night without sleep. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. In the morning, he went to find Hui Yuhao with black rings around his eyes, but he found out that Hui Yuhao wasn't in the academy. Mo Xian knew that Hui Yuhao and the rest of Shrek's 7 monsters were from the Tang sect. He also found out the exact location of the Tang sect from the other inner courtyard students before he made his way over. However, he didn't inform Cai Maya about his intentions. After all, he didn't know how the academy would react if they found out he wanted to learn about soul tools. What if they weren't agreeable? Mo Xian had always been very grateful towards the academy for nurturing him. However, it was always his dream to become a warrior on the battlefield. Eventually, his dream trumped his rationality, which was why he was here. He first wanted to ask Hui Yuhao whether he could become a soul engineer, and what kind of soul engineer he could become. Just as Mo Xian was formulating his approach, Hui Yuhao walked out. Hui Yuhao also had black rings around his eyes, which were also slightly red. Senior Mo Xian, what you are here for? Please come in. Hui Yuhao was confused by Mo Xian's sudden appearance. If he were in his normal state, he might have been able to guess. However, he was too tired now. The entire night of discussion had turned his voice slightly hoarse. Mo Xian was a little embarrassed as he said, Yuhao, apologies for coming so suddenly. If the Tang sect isn't convenient, we can speak outside. Hui Yuhao dragged him in and laughed, what's there to be inconvenient? There is no difference between the Tang sect and the academy. Senior Mo Xian, you don't have to be so formal. Come on, let's talk inside. As he spoke, he couldn't help but yawn. Mo Xian said, Yuhao, can you tell me what level I'll be able to reach if I start learning about soul tools now? You should know that my martial soul is slightly special. When I exhibit my soul skills, I don't really need to control them, since they're all domain-type soul skills. I've also learned many things in the academy, but I'm restricted by my martial soul. This knowledge only serves to enrich me. I want to be a soul engineer. I want to be like all of you, fighting against our enemies and not hiding behind everyone's backs. When he reached this last sentence, he sounded much more agitated. Hui Yuhao thought for a moment before asking, Senior Mo Xian, how old are you now? Mo Xian said, 25. Hui Yuhao said, you are already pretty old if you want to start learning about soul tools. All the aspects of knowledge regarding the creation of soul tools are very complex. You need to have a strong foundation first. It's very difficult. Mo Xian was anxious after hearing his words. However, didn't you tell me that? Hui Yuhao lifted his hand to interrupt him and said, don't be anxious. Let me finish speaking. You are indeed a little too old to learn about creating soul tools. However, it's not too late for you to start using them. For soul masters like the two of us, using and creating soul tools are completely different things. My suggestion earlier was for you to try using soul tools to protect yourself and increase your fighting strength. Mo Xian continued to probe, what standard can I reach if I only choose to use them? Hui Yuhao replied, if you are just using them, I recommend you use all-terrain soul forts, because of your situation. Not only will they help you raise an all-around defense, but they are also very strong, since they are quite large. With sufficient milk bottles, you'll greatly enhance your survivability and fighting stamina on the battlefield. After Xian Ziwen's research of sealed milk bottles was completed, many soul tools could be greatly transformed. This was especially applicable for soul tools that were sizable. Even though it would take some time to charge them, they could be used for a long time without worrying about when the soul power in the milk bottles would be depleted. Furthermore, a soul master wouldn't have to worry about the depletion of their own strength. With the appearance of such milk bottles and the Tang San's techniques, it was no longer a dream for ordinary people to use soul tools in the future. Mo Xian nodded and said, does this also mean that my fighting strength will increase as such soul tools become stronger? How long will it take me to learn how to use them? What? You dragged someone else over? Inner courtyard too. Mo Xian, why does he sound so familiar? Don't tell me that is the one that can enter the sea god's pavilion when he obtains 8 rings. Yuhao, how did you do it? Bei Bei spoke extremely quickly. He looked at Hui Yuhao as if he were looking at a freak. It had only been a few days. Hui Yuhao had brought several members into the sect. They included Nana, the soul engineers who were victimized by the Holy Ghost Church, Ji Juechen, Jing Ziyan, the 2 dark golden terraclaw bears, and even the chief researcher of the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy. What could he not do? After one more night, another member came knocking on the door. He was even one of the future members of the Sea God's Pavilion. Bei Bei had been in the academy for a long time already, and was even Elder Mu's descendant. He naturally understood more about the situation in the inner courtyard than Hui Yuhao, so he naturally knew more about Mo Xian than Hui Yuhao. Seeing that Bei Bei was shocked, Hui Yuhao touched his nose and said, eldest senior, I really didn't do anything. Mo Xian was just attracted by my all-terrain self-driving fort. However, you know that this thing can't spread. I didn't say anything before he offered to join the Tang sect. Can't he do so? Yes. Of course. Of course. Bei Bei confirmed his decision thrice. Yuhao, do you know what Mo Xian's nickname in the inner courtyard is? Hui Yuhao shook his head. However, he could make a rough guess, especially after Bei Bei pointed out that Mo Xian could enter the Sea God's Pavilion in the future. Bei Bei said, his nickname was given to him by Dean Yang. He's called the War Controller. War Controller. What a domineering name. Hui Yuhao was stunned as he asked, he's so strong. I've been enhanced by his halo before. To be honest, its effect isn't that great. Bei Bei laughed coldly and said, for soul masters of our standards, his enhancement isn't that great. However, have you ever considered the cumulative effect if thousands of soul masters were enhanced at the same time? The overall strength of an entire army can soar instantly. Whether it's in terms of speed, strength, or defense, they'll all be greatly enhanced. If abilities like bloodlust were used to supplement it further, can you imagine how a battle will turn out? Hui Yuhao was stunned. What? His halo can enhance thousands of people at the same time. That is so unreal. Bei Bei replied firmly, it's so strong precisely because it's unreal. He explained what he knew about Mo Xian's halo to Hui Yuhao. Mo Xian's abilities are a secret even in the inner courtyard. I heard about them from my grandfather. Even he was very impressed with Mo Xian's abilities, and decided that Xian should join the Sea God's Pavilion in the future. After Bei Bei mentioned Elder Mu, Hui Yu Hao was even more astonished. For Elder Mu to be impressed, Mo Xian's halo must be very strong indeed. After sending Mo Xian off, Hui Yu Hao heard something loud resonating from the sparring arena. There seemed to be someone cheering loudly. Eldest senior, who's at the sparring arena? Hui Yu Hao asked. Bei Bei replied, Kai Tu and Xiao Xiao. Nan Nan has lessons today, and returned to the inner courtyard before daybreak. Sancha didn't leave, and Donga is around too. They are also likely to be there. Let's go and take a look. Hui Yu Hao laughed bitterly. I was looking for Donga too. Although he was exhausted from staying up the entire night, he wouldn't go to sleep immediately. He needed to meditate to recover first. Cultivating with Wang Donga was naturally going to make his restoration faster. After discussing things with Xian Zuan last night, Hui Yu Hao felt that the burden on his shoulders had been lightened. Just like Xian Zuan had said, he couldn't reach the peaks of both a soul master and soul engineer. He didn't need to become a powerful soul engineer, he just needed to be a soul master who used soul tools. At least in the aspect of soul tools, Hui Yu Hao knew that it was an unknown whether he could surpass Xian Zuan even if he gave his all to do so. It was difficult to make such a choice, but he didn't need to ponder any further once he made it. He could put more of his energy into cultivating his twin martial souls and researching spirits. Along with Xian Zuan's various experiments, this was the more meaningful and valuable choice. Bei Bei and Hui Yu Hao felt the undulations of soul power the moment they entered the sparring arena. They saw that it was surrounded by Tang sect disciples. After years of development, the Tang sect was no longer as sparse as before. Besides Shrek's 7 monsters, there was still Nana and the young soul engineers that came with her. Bei Bei had also recruited some graduates from the outer courtyard. Of course, there were disciples from the inner courtyard, too. Mo Xian was a good example. After Hui Yu Hao and Xian Zuan made their calculations, they concluded that Class 4 sealed milk bottles had the best value, mostly because Class 5 and above sealed milk bottles required costly, rare metals. Class 4 sealed milk bottles required cheaper, more standard materials. One Class 4 sealed milk bottle would power 5 shots of the Zhuge Divine Crossbow Cannon. Of course, the prerequisite was that the cannon shell couldn't be above Class 3. However, this was already enough. There were different classes of the Zhuge Divine Crossbow Cannon, too. Consideration of this also led to the formation of problems. The most ordinary cannons could only fire up to a distance of 1 kilometer, and only used Class 3 and below stationary soul cannon shells. Intermediate-level cannons could fire Class 5 and below stationary soul cannon shells up to a distance of 3 kilometers. As for advanced-level cannons, they could fire Class 7 and below stationary soul cannon shells. Of course, these cannons were also at least Class 7. Currently, the Tang sect was developing low and intermediate-level Zhuge Divine Crossbow cannons. They weren't considering advanced-level cannons yet. After all, the cost of developing such cannons was too high. Furthermore, their cannons could fire anywhere from 6 to 18 cannon shells at once. Although the cost of such cannons wasn't low, they were acceptable to most ordinary sects. The cost was even less of a concern for Shrek Academy. However, the stationary soul cannon shells could only be used once. They were expended the moment they were fired, and needed to be replenished. Even if they were replenished by Class 3 stationary soul cannon shells, firing 18 shells at one go was equivalent to spending 3,000 gold coins. That was why advanced-level Zhuge Divine Crossbow cannons would be developed in the future, but not in large quantities. If the supply of cannon shells couldn't match the demand, what was the use of these cannons? In the sparring arena, there was a fight going on. The two parties involved were Jing Ziyan and Shu Sanxia. Shu Sanxia was standing in the center of the sparring arena. He flipped the shield of the Xuanwu turtle into the air, which resisted Jing Ziyan's attack. No matter how magical Jing Ziyan's fog was, she couldn't force him from his spot. Hui Yu Hao slapped his hand to his forehead and said, "They really can't take a break. It's so early in the morning, but they are already fighting." Bei Bei smiled, "This is a good thing. It's a form of motivation for everyone. If you don't want to lose, you'll have to work hard. Am I wrong?" Those who were watching the fight weren't just the ordinary disciples. Wang Donga and Ji Juechen were present, too. Ji Juechen was watching the fight quietly, the judgment sword behind his back. He was still using his original sheath for it, which looked slightly unsuitable. Bei Bei and Hu Yuhao walked over. Ji Juechen looked at Hu Yuhao, and his eyes brightened. However, Hu Yuhao immediately said before he even opened his mouth, "Don't find me for anything. I didn't sleep last night. I was discussing soul tools with Teacher Xian. My mind isn't in the right state now, and my fighting strength is at a low point. Even if you defeat me in this state, I don't think it's honorable for you, right? How's my third senior?" Ji Juechen replied without any hesitation, "Impressive." Shu Sansha and Jing Ziyan both had 6 rings. As an agility-type soul master, she didn't stand a chance against the defense-type Shu Sansha. The sparring had been going on for more than 10 minutes already. Shu Sansha hadn't moved a single inch, and only defended against Jing Ziyan's attacks. If this continued, Jing Ziyan's smoke power was bound to run out. Jing Ziyan rolled her eyes at him and retracted her martial soul. She said, "All right, let's end it for today. I'll challenge you again when we return." Shu Sansha chortled and replied, "Great. I'll be ready to fight you anytime." In fact, Jing Ziyan had put a lot of pressure on him. After sparring with Hu Yuhao, Ji Juechen wasn't the only who had improved. Jing Ziyan's martial soul was already very strange. Furthermore, her actual fighting abilities were getting stronger and stronger. Her attacks were quite incisive. Shu Sansha only defended and didn't attack. It wasn't that he couldn't, but rather because he knew that he would give her an opportunity to exploit if he did so. In that way, it would be difficult to predict the victor. This was only sparring, and not a life-and-death battle. That's why he decided to defend all the way, and created the stalemate. The fight between Bei Bei and Ji Juechen began. The two of them were standing in the sparring arena, separated by 50 meters. Their soul rings rose at around the same time. While Bei Bei appeared gentle and refined most of the time, he turned serious when he was going to fight. 2 yellow, 2 purple, and 2 black soul rings rose from his feet. He also looked slightly bigger. Bluish-purple electricity surrounded his body, and dragon scales started to surface on his skin. As his cultivation increased, the scales didn't just cover his arms anymore. The left side of his face was completely covered in scales, and his right arm ballooned in size. As the scales spread, they quickly engulfed his entire body. His shirt was almost torn apart as he grew in size. As electricity sparkled, Bei Bei seemed to be filled with boundless strength. He slowly lifted his right claw in front of his chest, and his eyes turned bluish-purple. As electricity revolved around his body, the space around him also started to distort. It became very difficult to tell where his actual position was. Ji Juechen's fighting style never changed. He grabbed the hilt of his judgment sword with both hands and slowly lifted it up initially. This sword was used by Ma Rulong against Ma Xiaodao during the tournament. Its power had activated Ma Xiaodao's evil fire completely, causing her to eventually be overcome. The results were tragic right now. The situation appeared to be different, as the judgment sword was in Ji Juechen's hands. The auras of darkness and light surged out from this sword at the same time. The sharp sword intent from Ji Juechen's body rose and combined with the aura of darkness and light. A strong sense of danger caused Hu Yuhao and the rest to turn serious. Hu Yuhao hadn't expected Ji Juechen to activate both the strength of darkness and light from the judgment sword at the same time. He didn't plan to use the skills that came with this judgment sword, but intended to combine the strength contained within the sword with his sword intent. Hu Yuhao had to admit that Ji Juechen was indeed a madman in terms of cultivation. The words madman and genius were usually synonyms. At least, that was the case for Ji Juechen. The sword radiance that shot into the sky was unpredictable. It extended more than 10 feet into the air, and was much stronger than Ji Juechen's original sword intent. This was the strength of a Class 8 soul tool. However, darkness and light were opposing forces. When they appeared at the same time, they were bound to conflict with each other. If one party gained the upper hand, it was bound to swallow the other party. The powers of darkness and light covered different sides of the judgment sword. To ensure the balance of the sword, the strengths of both forces were equal. At this point, they were activated by Ji Juechen and there was no conflict between them. However, it was more dangerous like that. The powers of darkness and light were about to cause an explosion. Solitary sword domain. When he had faced Wang Chua yesterday, Ji Juechen didn't use his strongest offensive ability, as he was unfamiliar with his opponent. Once he entered his domain state, his spirit, energy and mind would fuse together. It was impossible for him to show any mercy then. That was why he had used his evolved Dragonslayer sword intent. However, Wang Chua had been much stronger than he had expected, and thus he suffered greatly at her hands. However, he wasn't going to hold back today. As the eldest senior of the sect, Bei Bei's abilities were immense. Ji Juechen had just received his judgment sword, and thus he was raring to go. He was giving his all the moment he appeared. The last time Hui Yuhao had faced this domain, Ji Juechen had needed Jing Ziyan to help protect him. That was because incubating the domain required time. But this time, he used the domain immediately, as if he wasn't afraid of being disrupted by his opponent. Bei Bei moved. Just as Ji Juechen settled into place, Bei Bei initiated his attack. Bei Bei's abilities had been increasing steadily over these past few years. His fighting will had been affected by Tang Ya's disappearance, and there were changes compared to the past. He had slowly infused his yearning for Tang Ya, and his internal sorrow into his fighting strategy, complementing it with his soul skills. Although it didn't involve a fusion of spiritual and soul power as great as the sovereign's descent, his own comprehension was getting better and better. He was slowly seeing the path that belonged to him alone. Bei Bei stomped on the ground with his right leg, and his body shot forward like a bolt of lightning. In the air, he waved his right hand in Ji Juechen's direction. His thunderous dragon claw enlarged in the air and swept towards Ji Juechen. Even though his dragon claw was formed using soul power and lightning, it still projected a vivid form in the air. When it was about to hit Ji Juechen, the size of the claw was just at the right size to envelop Ji Juechen completely. At this point, the electricity surrounding Bei Bei's body retracted. However, his scales turned bluish-purple. A bright bluish-purple light that undulated slightly emanated from beneath his feet. He also let out a deep dragon's roar. It was very easy to tell if one was strong. Although Bei Bei had only unleashed his first soul skill, his control and judgment left Jing Ziyan extremely impressed. Bei Bei didn't give him the full 15 seconds. To be accurate, the thunderous dragon claw reached him after only 2 seconds had passed. The solitary sword domain was unleashed. The radiance on the judgment sword dimmed. The original tricolored sword radiance was covered by a dim layer of gray. As the sword radiance swept out, it converted into a streak of flowing light that dragged Ji Juechen's body along. The thunderous dragon claw couldn't stop it from moving forward. In Bei Bei's eyes, Ji Juechen had disappeared at this moment. What was left was only a sword blade without any aura, shining with a tricolored glow. Shit! Bei Bei cursed in his heart. It was his first time seeing such a sword intent. However, he was much more acute than others. When Ji Juechen's sword swept out, he knew that he couldn't resist it head-on. However, it was impossible to dodge it. When Ji Juechen's sword was unleashed, it completely locked onto Bei Bei. The sword radiance pursued Bei Bei, so fast that it couldn't be avoided. At this time, Bei Bei fully revealed his powers as the eldest brother of the Tang sect. His body, which had been charging forward, suddenly froze and became illusory. With his ghost shadow perplexing track, he suddenly moved to the side. Even though the sword light summoned by the sword fanatic was extremely fast, Bei Bei's ghost shadow perplexing track had reached a new level. In an instant, the sword light flashed past him, and the move that should have struck him was slowed by a single beat. Within this small amount of time, Bei Bei's eyes glowed with light. With a clear draconic roar, the 5 soul rings around his body shone with a brilliant radiance. His thick right arm swung out as he struck the sword light from behind. In an instant, the dragon scales all over Bei Bei's body started to change. They turned a brilliant shade of gold, and each bolt of lightning brimmed with bright energy. He waved his right dragon claw, which disappeared into the sky. When it reappeared, there was a second golden dragon claw in the sky, which clashed head-on with the sharp sword light. Bei Bei, however, took this time to quickly retreat. Crackle! It was as if lightning bolts from the 9 heavens had struck the earth. The brilliant golden light turned into countless sparks of electricity. Bei Bei's golden dragon claw in the sky was unable to block the terrifying sword light, and was blasted apart. However, the speed of the sword light dropped rapidly, too. Following that, the countless rays of electric light that had been blown apart quickly congregated together, enveloping Ji Juechen, and displaying the might of thunder and electricity. Tyrannical Emperor's thunderous domain. This was Bei Bei's powerful domain after he evolved his radiant holy dragon. The electricity crackled for a few more seconds before it slowly died down. They could slowly make out the figures of Bei Bei and Ji Juechen. Bei Bei had a new layer of purplish-blue dragon scales all over him. The golden light around his body quickly faded away, and around 7 to 8 meters in front of him, Ji Juechen stood with his sword in hand. While his grip was still stable, his body trembled non-stop. The clothes on his body were more or less destroyed. The side which represented light still shone brightly on his judgment sword, giving off a thick, bright aura. A drop of blood trickled down from the corner of Ji Juechen's mouth. However, there was no sign of pain on his face. All there was a look of deep contemplation. Bei Bei nodded his head at Ji Juechen and said, "Brother Ji, your sword intent is powerful indeed. What's the first move called?" Ji Juechen appeared to have been jolted awake, as he responded, "It's a domain I came up with. It's called the solitary domain. I lost." While he liked to fight, he knew when he had lost and when he had won. When Bei Bei used his thunderous dragon head and attacked with his tyrannical emperor's thunderous domain, he had used 7 moves rapidly. However, the power of these 7 moves was devoured by the powerful domain. Had Bei Bei not shown mercy, there was no way he would still be alive. Bei Bei shook his head and said, "No, you did not lose. Instead, in terms of innovation, I've lost. Brother Ji, after you familiarize yourself with your judgment sword, it will be hard for me to defeat you. Your sword can limit my power." Regardless of whether it was Hu Yuhao, Shu Sansha or Wang Donga, they all knew that Bei Bei was not lying. Ji Juechen said, "Thank you for your guidance, I'll spend more thought on it." With that, he nodded at Bei Bei and turned to leave. He would not dilly-dally, this was not his style. Jing Xian rushed up to him and asked, "Juechen, are you injured?" Ji Juechen shook his head. When he looked at Jing Xian, a smile crossed his face. Then, he stopped and turned to look at Bei Bei, Shu Sansha, Hu Yuhao and Wang Donga and said seriously, "Coming to the Tang sect is the best decision I've ever made. In the future, I'm afraid I'll continue to trouble you." As he said that, he bowed to everyone and then left, gripping his judgment sword tightly. Shu Sansha looked at Ji Juechen's disappearing figure as he mumbled to himself, "Everyone says I'm crazy, but that guy is crazier than I am." In his eyes, nothing is more important than his sword. Bei Bei said, "That's why he is so scary. His choice is a special path. He specializes in one thing and one thing only, and that's his sword. He doesn't even add a single soul skill to it. However, because of this, he'll be able to reach a level none of us could in the future." Yang Shaozhe said in a low voice, "To familiarize everyone with the new rules, as well as to assess everyone's skill, we shall now have a match between the old and the new team. As the new team has just been formed, they still need some time to learn to work together. Hence, we'll only have the individual elimination round for today. The first team to be completely eliminated loses. As there is a strength disparity between the two teams, the new team can send 10 members. Individual elimination. Shrek's 7 monsters were emotionless. The new team, including Wang Qiuer, looked extremely excited to try it out. Evidently, they did not believe that the old team was better than them. This match will be held at Soul Dueling Area. Let's go. A ferry was already waiting for them at the Sea God Pavilion. Everyone boarded the ferry as it headed in the direction of the outer courtyard for the Soul Dueling Area. It was a bigger place and hence, they could better demonstrate their powers there. Dai Huabing stared intensely at Hu Yuhao across from him, a light swirling in his pupils. While he was confident in his own abilities, he had never beaten Hu Yuhao once in all these years. In particular, during the Sea God's fated blind date, the group of them was still unable to beat Hu Yuhao and Wang Donga. They had barely stood a chance back then. It was a huge blow to his confidence. While he tried to convince himself that it was because of Hu Yuhao's and Wang Donga's martial soul fusion skill, he did not know if he could have beaten them even if he used the martial soul fusion skill he had with Zhu Lu. Once again, another chance had presented itself to him. This time, they would be competing in an individual elimination round. There would be no martial soul fusion skills. Could he beat Yuhao in a one-on-one fight? Hu Yuhao sat opposite him, but he did not look at Dai Huabing. Naturally, he would not concern himself with what he was thinking. With respect to this mortal enemy of his who had killed his mother, hate would always surface in Hu Yuhao's heart whenever he saw him, no matter how much calmer he had become. He feared that he could not control this emotion, and might kill him in the academy. "I'm a 5-ringed Soul King, Mother, can you see it? I'm already a Soul King. In the future, I'll head to the White Tiger Duke's mansion and avenge you. I'll make those who caused us to suffer so much pay for what they did." With this thought in his mind, Hu Yuhao's eyes glazed over slightly. However, he was still looking straight ahead, but in the direction of Wang Qiuer. Wang Donga gently pinched his hand. Hu Yuhao's body froze, and then he regained his senses. "Are you that engrossed?" Wang Donga asked him half-jokingly. Hu Yuhao smiled bitterly and replied, no, I'm thinking of other things. Wang Donga nodded and looked at the clear surface of the lake. You don't have to explain. However, just because he kept silent did not mean the rest had no objections. Dai Huabin snorted coldly and said, as the captain, how can you deploy your teammates without seeking our approval first? Is this how you want to win? To me, I think you want us to lose deliberately, because you have good ties with them. Wang Chioa glared at him. Suddenly, Dai Huabin felt his heart constricting. It was as if a terrifying beast was staring him down. I don't understand you. This is a spar, and the objective is to get everyone to know each other. Is there any problem in sending a particular person out first? Is an inter-academy spar so important? What we want is to beat them in the Continental Elite Youth Soul Master Tournament. If you can't respect my command, you're free to quit. Dai Huabin was on the verge of exploding from rage. However, Zhu Lu, who was at his side, pulled him back. Everyone had become older, and they were no longer as impulsive as Dai Huabin was. His impulsiveness had ended his studies in Class 1. While he was treated well in Class 2, he was still weaker than Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong, even though it was only by a bit. Zhu Lu knew how important this tournament was to Dai Huabin. Hence, he could not be allowed to do anything rash or impulsive now. Dai Huabin said nothing. However, Wu Feng said mysteriously, Captain, your resemblance to Wang Donga is uncanny. Are you sisters? Wang Chioa's eyes turned cold and she said, I'll only say it once. I'm not related to her by blood. We are opponents. Other than that, we have no other ties. Is that clear? Wu Feng glared at her. What's wrong with you? Can't you talk nicely? Wang Chioa turned around and faced Wu Feng. In that instant, a powerful energy surged from her body. Wu Feng had a dragon-type martial soul. However, in front of Wang Chioa, she could not calm herself even if she released her martial soul. She took a step back in shock, looking at Wang Chioa in a completely different light. Superior suppression, how is that possible? What's your martial soul? Wang Chioa ignored her. She turned her head to look at Zhu Xikhen and said, Go, don't worry about winning or losing. Just try your best. The moment Yang Xiaozha said start, Zhu Xikhen immediately released his martial soul. A thick treasure Bible hung in mid-air. The light emitted by the treasure Bible was much more powerful than in the past. 2 yellow and 2 purple rings spun around the thick book. Zhu Xikhen was now a 4-ringed soul ancestor. However, his soul power was already at rank 48, and he wasn't far away from becoming a soul king. In Class 1, he was considered exceptional. Just as he was releasing the treasure Bible, Wang Donga moved. She did not rush to release her martial soul, but instead she leapt up and dashed toward Zhu Xikhen. As Zhu Xikhen released his treasure Bible, he was also retreating quickly. While he was an assault system battle soul master, his strategy was in summoning. His treasure Bible's specialty was that as it obtained soul rings, it could trap slain soul beasts within it. While he could only personally obtain a single soul skill from the soul beast, he could also summon the soul beast with its own characteristic soul skill. This was the advantage of his treasure Bible. Few assault system battle soul master had such a summoning ability, and his treasure Bible was one of the best. Wang Donga was fast, but Zhu Xikhen was no sluggard. They were all taught how to run by Zhu Yi. Zhu Xikhen retreated quickly, but his treasure Bible was already open. His first soul ring started to shine. A ray of yellow light appeared, dropping from the treasure Bible onto the ground in front of him. A huge bear materialized and blocked Wang Donga's path. This was Zhu Xikhen's first soul skill, where he summoned the earthen bear. As Wang Donga approached, the huge bramble forest started to curl up and try to entangle her. Wang Donga snorted coldly, and her form turned ethereal. Tang Sect secret technique, ghost shadow perplexing track. Her butterfly wings, shining with golden fire, became as breathtaking as the raiment of light, when combined with the ghost shadow perplexing track. Her powder blue hair flew in the wind behind her, and her 2 wings were like 2 flaming scythes slashing in a sideways motion. The moment the resilient brambles touched her flaming wings, they retreated. With her guillotine wings, Wang Donga charged into the bramble forest like a combined harvester. Anywhere she touched, brambles would be sent flying. The golden fire started to spread in the bramble forest. It was an extremely powerful attack. Zhu Xikhen was depressed. This was a superior form of suppression. He believed that if he were a six-ringed Soul Emperor, it would not be so easy for Wang Donga to charge into his bramble forest. However, before Wang Donga, the bramble forest was far too weak. In particular, the fire on her wings was a natural trump card against his forest. However, while dreams may be nice, they were rarely real. Just as Ju Sikhen tried to swamp Wang Donga with a huge amount of brambles in the hopes of suppressing her utterly and forcing her to acknowledge defeat, a powerful soul energy started to shake. A ray of golden light about 30 meters long suddenly surged forth. The netherworld python was cleansed by this golden light, and all the surrounding brambles were reduced to dust. Wang Donga's fourth and fifth soul rings shone intermittently. The moment the hexagram array kicked in, Wang Donga, who was above it, started to change too. She pointed out with her right hand, and the hexagram array suddenly flew up. A giant golden pillar of light 100 meters long swept out. The terrifying power reduced the rest of the brambles to dust. Even Ju Sikhen was swept up by the bright golden light. Immobilized by the light, there was no way he could move anymore. He tried to raise his hands to admit defeat. Wang Donga's fifth soul skill, hexagram control. This was not the full extent of her power, but instead, she just borrowed some power from the hexagram array. If she released this power herself, its magnitude would be different. Of course, the way she released this power allowed her to save some soul power. When the golden light dissipated, Ju Sikhen lay on the ground with a pained expression on his face. The fire of light had drained his soul power. If Wang Donga had not retracted her power in time, his clothes might have been burned off. Yang Xiaozhi said with a smile. Sichen's performance was decent. Go, send the next one. 3-0. The Shrek's 7 monsters had a score of 3, U. The fourth person Wang Qiu pointed to was Xie Xianyu. Compared to the Land Sisters, Xie Xianyu was much more powerful. After all, in terms of cultivation, he was considered one of the most powerful alongside Dai Huabing and Ning Qian when he first joined the academy. At that time, Hu Yuhao had not yet shown his skills. When Xie Xianyu went up, the tides of the battle changed. While he was eventually defeated, he was able to deplete a huge amount of Wang Donga's soul energy. Donga, come back. We'll admit defeat this round and switch you out. After Wang Qiu sent out her fifth teammate, Ning Qian, Bei Bei recalled Wang Donga. Wang Donga's performance had been excellent, as she had managed to win 4 battles consecutively. Kai-Tu. Bei Bei made a gesture at He Kai-Tu. He Kai-Tu strode onto the arena. His big bald head was unique indeed. Furthermore, he had left a deep impression on everyone during the Sea God's fate. On that day, Ning Qian had been another participant at the blind date. In the end, she lost. For Ning Qian, while her style was auxiliary type, she was battling as a soul engineer. Against He Kai-Tu, the top soul engineer of Shrek Academy, how could she stand a chance? He Kai-Tu released a barrage of highly concentrated attacks against her. Just as he was about to follow up, Yang Xiaozhi stopped him. Ning Qian was defeated. Wang Qiu stood by the side. Other than her, everyone else on her team wore ugly expressions on their faces. From the start of the competition, while they had superiority in terms of numbers, they had already lost 5 rounds. On the other side, only Wang Donga had forfeited a match. He Kai-Tu's powerful soul tools stunned everyone. On Wang Qiu's side, only Dai Huabing, Zhulu, Wu Feng, and Cao Jinxian were left. Wang Qiu turned to look at her teammates and sighed in her heart. The disparity in strength was vast indeed. Hu Yuhao's team still brimmed with energy. It would be extremely difficult for them to win this spar. Even so, she could not allow her team's morale to be completely depleted. She had to raise their spirits. At this point, Wang Qiu said calmly, I'll go up next. With that, she strode to the center of the arena. Part 2 end here.